So, hi everyone, thank you for joining us for Ecommerce Espresso. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to the webinar series that's shorter than your coffee break. Keep these episodes as quick and insightful as possible. We don't hold a Q&A. However, if you have any questions you'd like to put to LoyaltyLion or today's guest, then please do tweet us at LoyaltyLionHQ using the hashtag Ecommerce Espresso, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Right, let's jump straight into it. Today, I am joined by Adam Kitchen from Magnet Monster. Adam, would you like to tell the audience a bit about yourself and Magnet Monster?
Yep, sure. Thanks for having me, James. Nice to be here. So we are an email marketing agency for e-commerce brands, and there's basically two sides to our services. We set up the automation, so things like abandoned cart, welcome flow, all your basic flows. And we also do monthly campaigns as well for brands. And we're just completely niched down in e-commerce. We do a bit of SMS, a bit of loyalty programs, but everything revolves around email for us. So that's our speciality.
Amazing. Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you've got to say on our questions. And it's great to have you here. So pretty excited about this first one. So Adam, what do you see as the most profitable trend in email marketing this year?
Things are going to change a lot in the next 2 years, I would say, massively. And this sort of coincides with the iOS updates recently. Mm-hmm. I think what you're going to see is that the customer acquisition cost is going to continuously go up. And this is going to put a lot of downward pressure on people coming through the top of the funnel. So the methodology in the past was just to blast people with discounts as soon as they came through. And this is not going to be enough anymore. It's not going to help you stand out, and you're just going to fade into the pack if you're not doing so already. Mm-hmm. So I think what you're going to see is a lot more emphasis on creative email strategies. Right. You're going to see people double down on deliverability, inbox placement. So there'll be a more technical aspect to email. It'll get more complex. And you're ultimately going to have to come up with more creative ways to engage the audience. Simple reason is because the old philosophy in the past was just to hit people with discounts. When you're constantly losing subscribers that you've just paid to acquire that data from Facebook or Google, then you're going to have more scrutiny over what the lifetime value is of those customers. So I think what you'll see is people will put more consideration to who's coming from the top of the funnel, because you'll have to prolong that engagement and sell to people much more than just a single time in the future. And how do you do that? You need to start considering the customer experience. So what type of content, what type of emails do they want to receive? What are they going to engage with? Not just for the first week after they subscribe and they're acquired, or a year's time from now. So that is going to be a huge, huge change. And I think you'll see a lot of brands really fizzle out and struggle. And the people who are willing to try new things, get creative, and build communities, will come onto that shortly. I know will really thrive. And like I said, the other ones will be in serious trouble.
Okay. And I think you've kind of raised a couple of really interesting points there, in that differentiation of your brand through creative email marketing, through on-site experience, through intelligent collection and usage of data is going to become more and more important as we see over the next couple of years. Do you think that is down to the consumer having more choice? Or is it just the increased cost of acquisition that's coming, we're seeing right now?
A bit of both, definitely. There is an overwhelming amount of choice. And like you said, simultaneously, the acquisition cost just means that you'll have to adopt new strategies. So it's definitely a blend of both. And another thing I should have touched on before as well, what you'll see is a lot more data enrichment of people. So what I mean by that is that it's not enough anymore to just have an email address on someone. That's just too generic. You need to know data about that customer. You need to know the preferences, what their goals are related to why they're using the products. And you need to proactively collect this information at each stage of the buyer's journey. So when you set your pop-ups up, you need to find out stuff related to what their goals are with those specific products or why they're shopping with you. You need to find out what the post-purchase experience is like. And you also need to find out why people are churning and not continuing in that buyer's journey as well. All these points are going to create a feedback loop that helps the product innovation team, the marketing team, and ultimately the content marketing strategy, because as you get to know the customer and understand them more deeply, you should be creating content around that to solve those problems and prolong that engagement even further.
I really agree there. I think, interestingly, people think sort of collection of data, there is a taboo around collection of data from the consumer's perspective. But interestingly, when surveyed, 80% of consumers say that a brand using their data in a helpful way is more likely to secure their loyalty, like asking for more details on who the customer is, their birthday, product and brand preferences, even things which are not directly linked to your brand, like hobbies, likes and dislikes. But being clear to the customer that this data is going to be used to enrich their experience and also can revolutionize the brand's segmentation and other marketing efforts. And that is kind of an interesting point working for a loyalty company, in that working for LoyaltyLion, a lot of what we do is around collecting this additional data, enriching your brand's understanding of a customer to help with these segmentation efforts and to be that point of differentiation. Really, really interesting, Adam. Thank you. So next question does make me feel a bit old using these terms, but we'll go them anyway. So marketing to Gen Z and marketing to millennials are proving to be two very different things. What advice do you have for creating email campaigns that drive customer loyalty for both millennials and Gen Z?
I think there's definitely a bit of a change in terms of positioning of things like language and copy, but I don't see a huge change in terms of the communication preferences. I know marketing to Generation Z, definitely maybe you get slightly better results from using SMS for certain types of messages. But in terms of the actual content and how to market to them, I think the basic premise of finding out what they're interested in and then segmenting customers that way is just still going to hold true, irrespective of what their age range is. So I do think, obviously, you see things like value-driven brands on the up. I think that's probably going to be a key factor in the long term for some of those younger and even the millennial audiences as well. But in terms of differentiating massively between the two, I don't personally think so. I think it just depends on your brand and what your values are. And then you need to communicate those via the most effective mediums for you. So I definitely think that you will see a bit more SMS communication to that younger generation, might help them cut through the noise a bit more. But I still think email is going to be a really strong channel for both. And the brands that we work with that do market to both, we haven't noticed any substantial drop off. So I think it's very overhyped as well, this message that people don't read the emails when they're younger. They definitely do. It just depends on how relevant the content is that you put out to them.
Exactly. I think that's a really interesting point. It's value-driven communication. It's not necessarily the channel that it's delivered. It's the value and the personalization of that communication, which will engage those customers. We also,
yeah. Also, just to touch on that as well. I mean, value driven. I know this almost comes across as like a bit of a buzzword for a lot of people, but value driven essentially is just a way to proactively collect more data on your customers and then serve them better. So there's definitely an aspect of the more you find out about the customer, you can create value for them. If you know what type of content resonates with them, what their key values are as a person, then this allows you to create more purposeful content for them. So that's how you should be approaching marketing in general, I think, especially in e-commerce now.
So aligning your sort of communication, your engagement strategy with your values. I think working for a loyalty company, it's interesting when you see I've got several clients who are as focused as sustainability. A large part of their marketing is around sustainability, and not just their marketing, but their on-site activities. For example, with their loyalty programs, they're incentivizing donating to environmental causes. They're donating to planting trees, giving points and giving incentives for people to return used products so it can be recycled. And I think it's very much in line with what you said, that if you can find out what your customer is interested in and link that to your values, you're going to be successful because you're engaging your audience on something that they care about. I think that dovetails very nicely with our next question, which is around customer community. So customer communities are a growing trend in e-commerce. How can merchants use email specifically to nurture a sense of community among their customer base?
It's, first of all, you have to invest in building a community, and some of the brands that we've worked with, their idea of a community is just throwing together a Facebook group where they can hit people with more and more discounts. Like, that's not a community. A community is that gives someone a sense of belonging and meaning. So I think that's a massive commitment and an undertaking for a lot of brands, that they really need to consider how they're approaching it. Like, you can't just throw up a random group. If you sell supplements, like, here's the supplements group. You need to have some type of meaning attached to what you're creating and add some value beyond your products. So being able to realize that not everything is about selling and delaying that gratification to serve the customers is the cornerstone of an effective group. That's how you win long-term engagement, and then sales come naturally as a byproduct of that. So how can you use email to push that? Well, I think the obvious one is just link to these active discussions, whether it is in a Facebook group, whether you have some type of community on site. Make sure that when you're sending your emails out, it's not just as a sales medium, it's an engagement medium. So you should be distributing that content, distributing things related to your community that's going on, and using this in between the sales related campaigns. And in fact, you should be pushing this much harder, in my opinion, because it gets better engagement. A lot of the concepts is if you do have a good community, and there's just no need to just saturate your audience with sales messages. So definitely, like, the key thing is to actually put effort into thinking about what constitutes a really good community, what are the fundamentals, what are your values, and then serving the customers in them, and then sharing this content via email. So again, you're just creating this loop where all your channels interact with each other and not individually.
I think that's really interesting. I think what I've seen in the last couple of years is a real trend in the increase in incentivizing the generation of user-generated content. So exactly kind of as I think you highlighted there, it's content which is from the community, propagated by the brand, and then fed back into the community to create more of that engagement with the community, rather than, as you've said, just slapping a Facebook together and calling it the community. It's not it's the community. It's a group of people that you're going to market to. A community is that two-way relationship, which I think is super valuable. I think an example, obviously there's a customer, customers are super interested in makeup. One of our brands got a very active community, and the administrators of that community, they do contribute, they do spread the language, they do spread the community via email, but the activity on the community is driven by the consumer, propagated by the brands, but driven by the consumer, and I think that's really powerful. I would definitely add to that the best communities that I've seen, two of the best are Bloom On, which does men's hair and grooming products, and Just Strong, which does is a lifestyle brand for women, like women empowerment apparel. They have amazing communities because they're not focused on selling products. It's about supporting the customers, and it's an actual community where customers just share things about their life. So it really is that lifestyle feel to it. And they're not actively pushing products in the group. They're just maintaining engagements as support groups. So I would highly recommend, if anyone wants to learn how to build a good community, to definitely check out those two brands. Exactly. I think that's that kind of nurturing community. And I think just one final point on that before we wrap up is it not only helps kind of increase loyalty towards your brand and therefore increase customers' lifetime spend, but those communities act as the ideal kind of jumping off point for new consumers. You dramatically reduce the pain of purchase if you're able to go into a community and see people's stories, see real people's stories about what the purchase journey was like, what the pre-purchase care was like versus post-purchase care, and it can be really valuable in getting someone to make that jump into your brand and actually make that first purchase. Adam, really, really interesting. So unfortunately, that is all we have time for. We've got to fit this into people's coffee breaks. So that brings us to the end of this episode of E-Commerce Espresso. I hope you all found it valuable and have been left with some great ideas and insights. As always, we'll be sharing the on-demand recording, so don't worry if you feel you may have missed something. One last big thank you to Adam for being today's great guest speaker. Remember, if you have any questions for either Magnet Monster or LoyaltyLion, just tweet us using the hashtag Ecommerce Espresso @HQ. Hope to see you online again soon.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ecommerce Espresso. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more of these short but insightful webinars, you can catch all of our previous episodes over on our YouTube channel. Just search for LoyaltyLion. Before you go, why not see if you can identify the gaps in your loyalty strategy that are costing you the most with our retention score sheet. You can see how your approach matches up with our downloadable tool over on loyaltylion.com/retention score sheet. That's loyaltylion.com/retention score sheet with no spaces. We'll see you soon for our next e-commerce espresso.